Sure. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Prophets of IT, the show where we skip the buzzwords and talk about what actually works. Quick context for listeners, I'm Jim Punzenberger, your host, author of $0 Advertising Strategies, and the guy behind ManageProspectingSystem.com. We help technical companies escape the feast and famine cycles of referrals and replace the guesswork with repeatable growth. Plus, we're the only IT marketing agency that lets you write your own guarantee for us. Today's episode is a little different. We got two brains today, and they're both from IQRush. Todd Parrish has spent over 20 years building ad platforms, running global go-to-market teams, and selling a creative agency to one of the largest media companies in the world. Ron is co-founder and chief data scientist who has led data science at Microsoft and Oracle. So this is not to be an opinion show. We plan to present with math, measurement, and truth. Todd and Ron, glad to have you both.
Thank you much.
Thank you, Jim.
Todd, give us the short version. What should people know about your background before we get into the bits and bytes?
So when we start talking about IQRush, we talk about search, so the ad business where I come from for 25 plus years. I think you underdated me with 20 years. It's more like 400 years, it seems. But we're focused in the advertising space and then uniquely on the same target customer that we have at IQRush. So building product for them, go to market or bringing product to them. I've led sales teams. I've sold myself into the same target customer. So we have, from a network and a business perspective, a deep point of view on what the market needs.
Cool. So Ron, same question to you. What should people know about your background?
Yeah. So very long history in the technology industry, as you mentioned. I spent 22 years at Microsoft, did some additional years at Oracle, and almost all that time has been focused on data science, analytics, basically making sense of data, right? So that's a perspective I'm really a strong advocate for. And it has become a foundation, core to the foundation of what we do at IQRush. So it's not just measuring data; it's helping people to make sense of data.
Yeah.
That's something I've long been passionate. Really excited to be able to do that.
Well, guys, let's get into it. Every episode, we do a truth bomb, something that industry believes that you think is flat out wrong. Todd, we'll start with you. You said eh, expert opinions in SEO and AI search are treated like facts. Why do you believe that this is not the case?
Yeah. So the big thing I hear in the market, which is just not true, which comes from experts' opinions and comes from these listicles that they produce. And they give you this top list you should go after. That's SEO. But I've seen that leach into generative search where you type a question into GPT and you get an answer back. Well, they have similar opinions as to how you should be present, your brand in that answer. And those opinions don't mean much unless they're math-based, data science based, and that's kind of what we do. So I think the truth bomb is that the expert opinions and listicles, there really is little need for those in this new world of math, AI, and data science. Number one. Number two is that I hear everyone say SEO is dead. SEO is dead. It's all about this new generative search, AEO or GEO. And that too is absolutely not true. How most of the models work, GPT and Gemini and Copilot, they start their search after a question being entered by going to an index that these other models use. And so because it starts with the index, if you're not part of that and you haven't done well with SEO, then you're either not going to be visible if you're not there, or maybe you won't do quite as well. That said, there's a ton of other things that AEO does do, and that's where we focus. So one is expert opinions. You don't need them, you need math. Number two is SEO is not dead. It's the starting point.
Hmm. Cool. That's quite an interesting, thought. So,
Right.
Ron, from the data side, what would you say is the biggest misconception you see?
Well, it's a bit of a follow-on to what Todd is suggesting here, right? So I'll go back to our experience with the SEO tactics. We did some analysis that took a look at all of the top 10 listicles that the SEO experts were putting forth as like, hey, here are the most important things that you need to do to get your site listed in the top results on Google, et cetera. And what we found was first and foremost, all of those lists were different. So the top 10 things from one expert to another were not the same, right? So it raises the question like, what is the foundation for that guidance? And when we drilled into it, we did the analysis. What we found was that there wasn't much more than just sort of conventional wisdom driving these opinions. So as we look um, into the major change in the industry today from straight up search engines to answer engines, we see some of these same things happening again within the industry. And for us, one of the key points is like a lot of companies are out there offering the capability to measure your AI visibility, right? And they're providing companies with a score. And what's challenging about that is that these answer engines are probabilistic in nature. So a single score is probably not an accurate way of representing your visibility, right? So despite the fact that you can come up with a methodology for very precisely measuring your score, like the number of citations that you might receive, that doesn't take into consideration that probabilistic variability. So the approach that we're taking is a little bit different. What we're actually doing is we're putting confidence intervals around these around scores so that you can actually have the context to help you interpret, is that score, is that score meaningful, or is it really just a byproduct of variability? And I could talk for hours on that, but I'll cut myself short and pause there.
All right. Well, let's shift gears here a moment to superpowers. Ron, you said your superpower is focus. Now, this
Uh,
sounds kind of boring on the surface, but I think it's something that's really important for everybody. You want to dive a little bit more into
yeah,
that?
well, absolutely. And I think it's today's era where people are very easily distracted by their cell phones and TikTok and everything else that's going on around them. There's so many demands for attention. Um, but I think certainly for me in my career, one of the things that's been really helpful is to tune all of that out, and focus very deeply on a problem. Because I find that context shifting, thinking about one thing and then another doesn't allow you to kind of create a very holistic perspective to go deep on a problem and think about the connections that are necessary to potentially solve it. Right. So that my ability to do that is something that I think is one of the reasons I have been able to be successful.
That definitely makes sense. So, Todd, we're back to you now. Um, you mentioned that your superpower is just stopping trying to be smart.
Yeah. For years when I first started like at Microsoft and other places, I always wanted to be the smart guy. I wanted to be as smart as I possibly could. And that put pressure on me to try to talk a certain way or act a certain way or engage in a certain way. And once I got to a point in my career where I was more comfortable with myself, then that some of that pressure went away and it allowed me to think more completely or more complete from end to end. And that kind of let my smartness, if you will, come forward, or it allowed me to be easier and more comfortable. And as soon as I did that, I was able to start doing more. I wished I had started like being comfortable with myself in my career when I was 21 and not say 35. But I encourage folks to be comfortable with who they are, and I think they'll do better work.
That makes sense also. So, moving on to the $1 million learning moment. What the mistake that still stings a little bit for you guys. Um, so, Ron, what would you say was one of your $1 million learning moments?
Yeah, I think it it comes down to a truism that perception is reality. And like I say, it's a truism, and you're like, yeah, of course, but what does that really mean? And for me, it came into context when I was responsible for an organization that provided a reporting service to the broader organization. Right, so the platform allowed people to onboard data into our database, and then to use a common reporting platform to kind of generate reports for business users. And I think one of the things I didn't fully appreciate is the extent to which uh, other organizations, thought of those data feeds, those reports as coming from our organization. So the way we thought about it was like, hey, we're providing the service to the rest of the company. But what would sometimes happen is like these other organizations would build reports, or they'd provide data feeds, and if those ever broke for any reason, you know, we we kind of thought, hey, that's the responsibility of these organizations who are building reports or providing the data feeds. So people would come to us and say, hey, that report's broken, and we'd say, well, it's not us, it's them, right? But the reality was, every time that happened, we were taking a perception hit because people thought it was our um, even though we would point out that our platform is 100% up and running. Um, again, it was a little bit of a reputation hit, and it just chipped away, chipped away, chipped away until people thought we had a problem. Um, and really, it wasn't until weeks, months later that I realized that, like, we're going about this all wrong. You we need to assume some level of responsibility into fixing this problem. And you know, and that eventually was the right decision. But I have to admit that I felt a little bit of regret not having realized that sooner, not realizing that perception is reality.
So, flipping this over to you, Todd, what's one learning moment in your career?
Let me roll my big long list of learnings that I actually have. I'll pick one. So I worked in the enterprise space, in a number of different companies like Microsoft, as I mentioned. I've also spent a fair amount of time in the startup space as well. And so there is no rule book. You identify a need, you apply whatever knowledge you have, you bring the right people together, and you start working. One of the things that I did early on, my very first startup, was we fell in love with a piece of technology. And so this is back in 2012 or 13. And it was the idea that you could put these little sensors, kind of like the fobs that Apple tags, but we made them a lot smaller, and you could start embedding them in various places. And we could see how people via their phones would move around. The technology was awesome. We had all kinds of ideas. And so we jumped forward on how we can censor a room and then use that for advertising and handsets in the real world. It sounded cool, but we were so far ahead of where the market was that when we went out to market and sold to the customers, we were talking to them about what we wanted them to realize so that we could solve that problem and meet that need. But they didn't yet have it. And so by being too far out, we were unable to get a lot of early traction and kind of start moving forward. So it's maybe a truism as well. Like, we were basically a technology looking for a problem to solve, as opposed to the consumer has a problem. Let's back up from there and solve it with the technology. So yeah, technology for the sake of technology was the mistake.
Got it. So, guys, before we wrap up here, if somebody's interested in IQRush or getting more about you guys personally, uh, what would their next actions be to learn more?
Maybe I'll start with one thing. Maybe I should have started early. So what at IQRush we do specifically is, so where with generative search, so where a consumer would ask a question of GPT, the answer that comes back, our clients, we make sure their brand names and their brand terms are included in that answer. So it's kind of like being visible for within the generative space. Also, at the end of each answer is a citation. It's a clickable link. So we make sure our clients are also part, or they are that citation. So driving traffic back to a website, all using AI search. That's what we do. So we're at IQRush.ai from a web page perspective. But anyone, please, we love talking to folks about this space. We can help e-commerce space companies, mid-size and enterprise. But you can reach me at my email, which is Todd, Todd, at IQRush.ai. Love to hear from
Yep.
everyone.
And I'm at Ron at IQRush.ai.
That's simple email addresses. I like it. Well, we'll check the show notes too if you're interested. We'll include that information in the show notes.
Awesome.
And well, until next time, guys, it's been great having you on. A pleasure having you. And if you're an IT owner or executive looking to escape the feast and famine rush, feast and famine of referrals, check out managedprospectingsystem.com. Until next time, stay hydrated and caffeinated. Bye for now.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.